I remember one member speaking up and saying, that was super frustrating. I thought we were deciding this together. I wish I'd have known that ahead of time. It would have changed how we had this conversation.
Yes. So context is everything, and it helps mitigate conflict ahead of time to be able to say, this is the context for this topic. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to season 3 of the Leading Smart podcast, Leading in Real Time. And when we say leading in real time, we're serious because Tim's in a hotel room in California, LA, right?
Los Angeles, I'm looking right at LAX airport, which I'm going to walk over and hop on a plane here after we're done.
That's awesome. And I'm in my we're sort of getting closer in my home office. I'm doing a little bit of a zhuzhing up of a home office and was just telling Tim all the things that I don't
Can you
like
spell
about
that?
it.
Jujin, can you spell that for me?
Zhuzh. Nope, definitely not.
J-U-J? I don't know.
Zhuzh, zhuzh, zhuzh. Feels like it should be like a DG, like judge, but judge. I don't know.
We could probably do
if
that up
you
there.
if you know how to spell that, email us
Let us
and let
know.
us know. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, seriously, leading in real time. And what I've enjoyed the most about this season so far is that we're like inspired throughout the week. So in this week's episode, I was on a call a couple days ago with an executive pastor of a very large church, and we were talking about executive team meetings, and they've got a really dialed in, awesome process. And he was surprised when I told him that most executive teams that I work with don't feel confident with their executive team agenda or use of time. And then I was surprised that he was surprised. So I thought, what a great topic, because Tim and I are also nerds and we could talk about meeting structure all day, every day. And so, yeah, that's our topic of this week, Tim.
Yeah, and we talked about a little bit last week when we talked about Working Genius, but the common thing I hear, and these are like super large churches that you would think have it all together. The common thing I hear when I'm sitting in those meetings, when a topic will come up and people be like, wait, didn't we already decide this? Like, didn't we already, like, why are we talking about this again? Or what did we decide last week? I think we decided. So like the meeting, the discipline, just the normal meeting disciplines are lacking. I think it's because we like do life together and we're friends and whatever, and you don't want things to get too formal, but man, you waste so much time if you don't just have some basic things down.
It's so true. So we're gonna dive in to. I'm just gonna kind of pepper you with questions. These are the questions I get the most, and then I'll chime in as well. Of like getting real tactical this week on executive team meetings. So one of the first questions that I get is cadence. Like, how often should we be having executive team meetings? So what do you think about that, Tim?
Yeah, and first let's define when we say executive team meetings, we're
Mm.
talking about whatever the top leadership team of your church or organization is, whatever you call it, senior leadership team, executive team, doesn't matter. But what I think less than weekly is really difficult. So I would schedule them weekly. You're probably going to cancel one a month because 3 people are gone and it's just not worth having the meeting. So I think that they should be on the calendar every single week, same time every single week. If it's less than an hour and a half, it's probably not enough time. If it's 3 hours, that might be too much time. Like you're probably talking about things you don't need to be talking about. So somewhere in that 90 minutes to 2 hour range.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely weekly. And I think if you're really dialed in, which we'll talk about this in a second, around like agenda and clarity coming out of the meetings every week, I would love to see it at the hour and a half mark and no more.
Yeah.
But especially if you're a new team, expect that you'll need to spend more time together, and that is okay. Like, 'cause you've got to build that trust, you've got to build those rhythms. And I find investing that time on the front end and as a new team, there's that framework. I don't know who came up with this, but like at the 4 phases of every team, it's like forming, storming, norming, and then performing. Yeah.
Never heard that in my life.
Really?
I have
Oh,
not.
I can't believe I just taught Tim Stevens something new, you
That
guys.
was amazing.
40 years of ministry, and on November 13th, Holly Tate just taught Tim Stevens something new. That's awesome.
Forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Performing. Yeah. I don't know who I stole it from somebody. Somebody, it wasn't me. I don't know where
Said
I heard
so.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wanna go
But
around.
when you're in that forming and, forming stage, and that framework is really helpful because and actually maybe norming and then storming. Anyway, I'll look it up and we'll talk about it in next week's episode. But the point is, when you're in the forming stage, you got to spend more time together. So, okay, you just talked about canceling the meetings. This is something that I have a really hot take on this. I'm curious if you agree. I see a lot of executive teams cancel executive team meetings when the senior leader is not available. And what I see happen often is that is the leader that is the most unavailable. So then you're only having your executive team meetings really like once a month, if that, when the senior pastor is not there. I strongly recommend that executive teams have someone who owns the meeting that is not the senior pastor, and have the meeting if at least two people can be there. That's my opinion. If at least two of the team can be there, have the meeting anyway. Maybe it's going to be shorter, maybe it'll only be 20 minutes. That's okay. You just got another hour and a half back in your day. But I think there is something to the rhythm of showing up and working through the items that you can with those people in the room. But when we have a meeting that's reliant on one or two people being there for a team, then I don't know that we really have a team. I think we have more of like a working group with a leader. So that's one of my hot takes. I'm curious if you agree
Yeah,
or disagree.
totally agree. I think if you're canceling it every time the senior leader, senior pastor, whoever, CEO, whoever's at the head of the organization can't be there, that's showing me that your senior leader is the bottleneck for the organization. Too many things are rolling up to his or her desk, and they're having to weigh into too many things, and they're not probably unintentionally, but they're not empowering the team to make decisions to keep things moving. So I totally agree with you. Have someone, they don't have to be in charge of the room, but a meeting facilitator, someone who's going to make sure that the meetings happen and they're making sure that we've got the agenda and that we're taking good notes and that we're moving the meeting along and all of that. And again, they do not have to be this, everyone doesn't have to report to them. They're just the meeting facilitator. They're probably just really good at tenacity kind of work and keeping things up. So yeah, totally agree with that. I think the times you're going to cancel are when your church is doing a conference and everyone's kind of out, or you're closing the offices between the holidays or whatever. Those are obviously the kinds of exceptions, or your whole lead team is going to a conference together or on a trip together kind of thing. But I think that regular cadence is super important.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we've talked about cadence, we've talked about the length of time, canceling, being consistent is key. Let's talk about agenda. I was just on a call yesterday with one of our Leading Smart clients. We weren't talking about executive team meeting, we were talking about all staff meetings, but similarly, where I see whether it's all staff or executive team meetings, where we're reinventing the wheel every meeting. And so it feels, and usually that's that person who feels like they're in charge of the meeting, or maybe nobody else is stepping up. So they're taking on the
Yeah.
responsibility to make that happen, and they're carrying anxiety or stress every week around it because they feel like they're reinventing the wheel every time. So, do you have any recommendations or best practices around components that should be on an executive team meeting agenda?
Yeah, I do think it's important to have some kind of a charter, some kind of a purpose statement for what this lead team meeting does and doesn't do. I just worked just the last 2 days with a church on this, and now they have four questions that they put at the top of the agenda, basically, and they're filters for what should be on the agenda and what should not. So rather than the meeting facilitator, who's not the boss of the people in the room, rather than them having to be the gatekeeper and tell someone that's a peer, not a subordinate, you can't have that on the agenda, they're just asking people to kind of self-diagnose, run what you want to put on the agenda through these four filters, and then decide if it belongs there. And and I don't know them off the top of my head. One of them would be something like, is this a thing? Is this a topic that really only needs one other person in the room and could be done outside the room, and then you bring it as a recommendation, if at all. So I think that's important. I think like decision rights, like deciding ahead of time and maybe even putting it right in the agenda, who holds decision rights. So sometimes if I'm a member of the team, sometimes you're asking for my input, but you're going to make the decision. Sometimes you're saying, "Hey, we're going to decide this as a group." which is great to know. Sometimes you're saying you're just coming in, and it's for your information, like the decision's been made. Just want to make sure you know so you can communicate this well with the rest of the team. So some people use, like we talked last week about the widget. So, it might be the
Yep.
WI, like we're just brainstorming. It might be ET, like decisions have all been made, we're executing. So that kind of thing might designate what that topic is about. You've heard maybe of the RACI. I think it's, are we responsible? Are we accountable? What's the C?
Um, I'll
The
look it up.
consensus maybe, or informed. I think the I is informed, but you're kind of just saying ahead of time, like that's the purpose of this particular topic, or that's how we're
Con
approaching this particular.
Consulted. C is consulted, and then I is informed. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just helpful to know. And it helps, like I've been in meetings. I was in a meeting recently where it was like a half hour conversation about a topic. And at the end of the topic, the group thought that they were all deciding together. At the end of the topic, it became apparent that the senior leader was making the decision. He was just looking for input. And I remember one member speaking up and saying, that was super frustrating. I thought we were deciding this together. I wish I'd have known that ahead of time. It would have changed how we had this conversation.
Yes, so good. Context is everything, and it helps mitigate conflict ahead of time to be able to say, "This is the context for this topic." So good. Yeah, there are so many good frameworks out there. I think one of the things I love about us at Leading Smart is we're not gonna be prescriptive and say, "This is absolutely the framework you should use." We're gonna introduce you to several. So whether it's, Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage, whether it's RACI, I have one on the Ready Network. I call it a Ready Rhythm, where I kind of strip down. It's using a lot of the principles from The Advantage, but stripping it, making simplifying it because I find a lot of executive teams get overwhelmed if they're not already embedded into the Lencioni um, work. So anyway, but choosing one and sticking with it for a period of time. Give it, say, hey, we're going to try this for 3 months or 6 months, and just find those areas over that time where things might be broken and you can modify it later, but where everybody knows they're going in with a structure. I also, Tim, I really like to see executive teams start with orienting around mission, vision, and values in some way. When I'm working with a team that is where their executive team that has dysfunction or lots of conflict, I like to spend a lot of time there in the beginning because I find that they're getting stuck in a lot of the doing rather than the leading. And so I want to use those that first section of an executive team meeting to help raise their eyes and see the forest through the trees. What are we doing here? Why are we doing it? And how are we doing it through our values? So again, that can look different for every team, but I do like to see them starting there because I just think it's a great reorienting when we're coming into our executive team meeting with, maybe we're coming out of a meeting that was really hard and high conflict, or we're coming out of a pastoral meeting where we had to just pour a lot of emotional energy out. Whatever that might look like, I think it just helps get everybody on the same page around mission, vision, values before we move forward with blocking and tackling. Yeah.
A couple other things on the agenda. One, you kind of referenced it there, but I like to see a purpose, a one sentence purpose statement at the top of the agenda. It could be the purpose for that team, but I think even further, even below that, or as important, be like the purpose for this meeting. So this particular meeting, maybe we're just going to. This meeting is pretty much about brainstorming Christmas. We're going to have a couple other business items, but that's kind of our priority for this meeting. And then the other thing would be, and again, your meeting facilitator managing this, like what are your repetitive components? So some of them might be weekly. So a repetitive component that might be weekly is action steps from previous meetings. And so you're just talking about things. We assigned some things to this room last week or 3 weeks ago, whatever, and like, did it get done? Like, can you report back? So those things, like, just they disappear and you forget about them if you don't have a sense that the room doesn't know, like, oh wow, they're going to actually ask me about this next week. Did I get it done?
Yep.
It'd be like a repetitive thing, probably usually towards the top of the meeting. Sometimes I see a repetitive thing at the bottom. Maybe the last thing of the meeting is, what did we decide today? And you just kind of recirculate the decisions we made. And you'll often hear someone say, "Oh, I didn't think we actually landed that." And it's like, okay, let's talk about it again for 2 minutes because it seems like we landed it. And
Yeah.
then there's irregular ones. Like what I like to do, we work with Leading Smart. We work with helping teams come up with like a team covenant.
Mhm.
What are
Yes.
the values of this team together? And once you have that, I think early on, maybe monthly, but after that, probably quarterly, you're just bringing it back up and you're saying, how are we doing? Like we've made these
Mhm.
commitments to each other. Like a covenant might be that we're going to be present and engaged and not distracted in meetings. So you just say, hey, give yourselves a grade. How are we doing on this? Are we
Mm.
staying engaged? A covenant might be we're going to say our truth in the room. We're not going to, just keep our mouths shut and then talk about it down the hall. Okay, how are we doing on that? And then you just every now and then, because you just want to get better and better and better, and those things slip if you're not regular at reviewing them.
Yeah, so good. Okay, what about goals, metrics, key priorities? There's a zillion words, objectives, there's so many different words we can use for these things. What do you like to see from an executive meeting perspective of how we are talking about or looking at goals, metrics, priorities, objectives, etc.?
I hardly see any church do this. They hardly ever have a dashboard that they like. Every church I've ever worked with is working on trying to find the right dashboard.
Yep.
And
Same.
they're always asking the question like, are we even measuring the right things? Like someone in the room is saying, okay, we're looking at attendance and money every week. Are we measuring the right things? So whatever those are, and I think those can change over time. When I was at Willow working with the campus pastors, we call it the top six. So the top six metrics, and we just had that on our agenda every single week that we met. And
Mhm.
people just click on it, they go over to the Excel spreadsheet or Google spreadsheet, and it would have the top six metrics of the things that we were tracking. And some of those you're probably going to track every single year because you're a church. And some of those would be like, okay, specifically this year, like one of ours I remember was new families, visits from new families. And so we were trying to move the needle on growing younger as a church and doing better, meeting the needs of young families. So that was a metric we were for probably 2 years we were following and just tracking how many new families are we getting. And then if everyone's just thinking about it, then they're thinking about like, what can I do in my area to help us reach new families? So you can't have 40 things on that dashboard, but you can have
Mhm.
a handful. Six may be at the top end of too many, but I don't think it should be very many. But that's a key component. It could be just it's like printed on the agenda, and
Mhm.
you drill down on it. And some weeks it's just there, so that you
Mhm.
know what's important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to just encourage executive teams, don't worry about over engineering the metrics or the dashboard. Just start somewhere. And same thing, like give it 3 months, give it 6 months. Don't change it for that amount of time. But the key is just on a weekly basis, you're at least looking at it. It's there for accountability, for consistency, and again, to reorient us around what are the key things that we've agreed to. So I love to see it on the agenda. I love to see just like a red, yellow, green. Whoever's owning that, just, red, yellow, green. And if it's green, we probably don't need to talk about it. If it's yellow or red, maybe we spend a little bit of time talking about it in that meeting. So that's great. All right, we've talked about cadence, we've talked about time, we've talked about the agenda. Now let's talk about tooling. I spent 4 years at Leader and I'm still so passionate about making sure that we have a collaborative tool that can house our agendas. It doesn't have to be something like Leader. While that is super helpful and awesome, highly recommend you look at it if you haven't. But even if it's a Google Doc or if you're on Microsoft, like a shared, I'm probably gonna use the wrong language because I'm not a Microsoft person, but like a OneDrive or whatever it's called. But or like if even as simple as like an Apple Note. I mean, there are free options. So I feel like I want to just eliminate any excuse to not use a collaborative agenda. This will save you so much time to be able to empower each person in the meeting to be able to add things as the week is going on. Because what I find, myself included, when there's not a collaborative shared agenda, you're pinging each other or having these ad hoc meetings throughout the week when that really could be talked about in the executive team meeting. And so for everybody to see it there all in one place, I think is so powerful, whether it's a software, Google Doc, Apple Notes, Microsoft OneDrive, whatever, just make it collaborative. What are you seeing churches use, Tim?
Yeah, and I would say in addition to agenda is the notes that go with it. So you don't need a separate place to store the notes. You just store them right on the agenda from that meeting. I mean, you and I, our weekly meeting, we have a Google Doc, And
Mhm.
we have, if we can go in there, we can look back for the last many months of our meetings and see what we talked about and what we decided. And often we have to, because it's like, what did we decide about that? Let's go back
Mhm.
and look. So having that, and again, like you just said, doesn't have to be an expensive tool. It's probably a tool you already have. You know, at Willow, we were using Google Docs forever before we switched over to Leader, and
Mhm.
you can make that completely function, and that's what we're doing now with our Leading Smart meetings. I think meeting part of the meeting discipline is the task assignment. It's the taking the minutes and having them accessible, and then it's the assignment of tasks and follow through,
Mhm.
and that's where
Yeah.
teams spin their wheels because they don't
Yeah.
have one of those two things in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just said this offhandedly, but I think this is a separate. I'm kind of taking notes as we talk about, so I can do a recap at the end. But the end of meeting discipline, that's a Lencioni term that he calls end of meeting discipline, which is, you've already said this, Tim, but I just think it should be its own little, you know, item in our conversation today. So we're recapping, what did we decide and who's doing what? What did we decide and who's doing what? And and it doesn't need to be the senior person in the room. Whoever has tenacity as a genius is often a really great person to help us with this. But do not leave the room or the Zoom link until the room or the Zoom, that rhymes. Don't leave the room or the Zoom until everybody's on the same page about what we decided and who's doing what. Because this also impacts communication. We've all left a meeting where somebody's excited and they go announce something to their team, and then the other leader's like, "What? We weren't gonna announce that until 4 months from now." It's like, "Oh, I didn't know." And it's often not malicious intent when these things happen. When miscommunication happen, it's often not because someone's being malicious. It's just because we haven't aligned on what we actually decided, who's doing it, and when we're communicating it. So that end of meeting discipline is really key, and that should be on the agenda there at the bottom. You can even label it end of meeting discipline, um, there on the agenda.
I've seen teams also add to the end of meeting discipline something from their covenant. So I sat in
Mm.
yesterday, and one of their end of meeting disciplines is they always ask at the end, is there a last 10%? I think is how they phrase it. So basically, did we say our truth? And we did that yesterday in this meeting, and one of the guys spoke up and said, "Yeah, I want to say a little bit more." I kind of held back. I want to say a little bit more. And it was great. It was a great way to end the meeting. Kind of brought them together. So I think that can be part of that end of meeting discipline. You just have to make sure you save time for it.
That's awesome. Well, and that's also a power of an agenda, is especially our internal processors. Like, Tim, you're this way. You're an internal processor. And so, like, for you to know what we're going to talk about so you can already do some pre-thinking, is so helpful to get the best out of our internal processors. And then it also helps people like me who could just externally process all day. If I've looked at the agenda, hopefully I've thought about it a little bit, so I'm not just talking for 25 minutes and dominating the meeting. So agendas are helpful for both internal and external processors, just to make sure that we get our best work out of each other.
Yeah, so good.
Okay. Well, we talked about cadence, we talked about time, we talked about agenda, we talked about tooling, and then we talked about the end of meeting discipline. Anything else we should touch on today when it comes to like blocking and tackling effective executive team meetings?
So maybe you're going to get to this. I don't know. So, but I'll throw it out here. Lencioni talks about the four different types of meetings, and I've never effectively used the everyday stand-up meeting, but the other three have been super helpful in my work. But I just thought about that when you were talking about the red, yellow, green. Like you might have like something that's red, and it's like we don't have time to talk about it, but we actually need. What does he call it? A tactical? What's he
Ad,
call
ad hoc,
it?
ad
An ad
hoc.
hoc meeting.
Yeah.
So it's like we're gonna meet separately for an hour with the right people on the team. Maybe it's some of the lead team, maybe it's others as well. You're pulling in, and you're gonna tackle a specific thing to solve it, and then you're gonna bring back a report to the lead team, and then those semi-regular, quarterly, by the term, yearly retreats, I think are really important for us to kind of get out of the urgent, and to kind of get our eyes up and to be thinking down the road. And I think in the church, I found like the best for me in the church world, it's probably 3 times a year. 4 times a year is hard because you kind of use almost semesters, summer, spring, and fall in the church versus quarters. And so
Mhm.
really fall sometime. middle of the winter and sometime right before summer holidays hit or summer vacations hit, where you're taking, and I like offsite. Offsite doesn't
Mhm.
actually need to be, I mean, you may not have money to like rent a place or something. It can be in someone's living room. It can just be in a different part of the building where no one can find you. We did that at Willow a lot because we had such a large building, we could actually hide
Yeah.
in the bowels of the basement. And it's like it felt like we were off site. We weren't going to be distracted or bothered. Like get away, get out of kind of your normal place. And if you can, like every now and then, maybe once a year, spring it, a couple nights where you're actually having not just meeting time, but you're actually having some hang time and meal time together as well. I think that's where I
Mhm.
see teams really bond for the long term.
Yes, and I want to encourage leaders to think about that as an investment and not a cost. I hear that often where whether it's attending one of our executive pastor, lead pastor gatherings, or it's paying, budgeting like 10K for your executive team to get off site or whatever it might be. Or it's like, well, we just don't have the budget for that. And I would argue you don't not have the budget for that. Like there are very few things in my mind very few things that are worth that. Like in the sense
Yeah.
of it's like, yes, is that 10,000 not going towards this mission project? Yes, but if our executive team is working effectively, that missions project is going to be that much more effective. We'll be able to raise more money for it, or we'll be able to be more efficient with our resources around it if our executive team is healthy and thriving and all on the same page and mission aligned. And so I'm really passionate about helping leaders to be able to like whether it's guilt or just relieving that burden from you, but you have permission from Tim and Holly to invest those dollars in your executive team because when you are missionally aligned, you're unstoppable.
And I mean, I don't know that I can prove it, but I think it's money you get back or it's money you don't waste because you see
Yeah.
lead teams that spin their wheels with turnover and with sideways energy and with lack of unity, which turns into toxic culture. And if you can be spending some money on some significant things, both for the lead team and the whole staff, that helps pull them together and move them along in the same direction. Anytime we've had to cut budgets, when I've been in control of the budget, it's always the first thing that's brought up. Well, let's cut out the conferences, let's cut out the training, and it's always the last thing that I allow to get cut.
So
Um,
good.
because you're just going to lose the team. And once you lose the team, then you're just playing catch up and you'll see organizations, churches go into decline for years and they just can't get out of that spiral.
So true, Tim. And speaking of, we still have some spots available for our Leading Smart gatherings coming up this spring. It's hard to believe they're just around the corner. So
I know.
if you've heard about it or you've seen it via email, and you haven't signed up yet, please do so. leadingsmart.com/gatherings. We have 3 in the spring, 2 for executive pastors or that second chair leader, and then 1 for lead pastors. One of them, the 2 executive pastors, one's in Florida, one's in California, and then the lead pastor one is in California. You can find all the dates, all the info at leadingsmart.com/gatherings or email us, tim@leadingsmart.com, and we would love to answer any questions.
And here's a question. How do you know Holly lives in Houston without saying Holly lives in Houston? It's because she thinks a gathering in January is spring. That's like
That's
winter. That's the middle
so
of the hardest
true.
part of winter.
I have been saying spring. That's so true. Yeah. Yep. It's always
But that's
spring.
that's when the grass starts growing again. It's like early February and where you live.
It's so true. That is very true. Yeah. Yeah, it's a high of 83 here today and on November 13th when we're recording this, which is crazy.
Yeah, so crazy.
Oh man. And then also want to remind everybody to go to leadingsmart.com/podcast to download our ebook that accompanies this season. It's called the Simply Strategic ebook, the 20-year anniversary edition. This is our way to look back and reflect at 20 years ago in ministry and when Tim and Tony Morgan launched that podcast. I loved you posted on Instagram this week about which of course you did this. You actually looked up who
I
coined
got a
the
little
term.
nerdy.
Yeah, the term podcast. So actually tell everybody about it was in Europe, right? Somebody in Europe
The first time the
in
word podcast was used was in 2004, and it was some journalist in Britain, somewhere, UK. And then I think it was June of 2005 was kind of like Apple kind of like embraced the term and brought podcast onto iTunes. And so, and we launched our podcast in December that year, so just 5 months after it was actually a thing. And what was interesting, we were like the top like ranked Christian podcast for the whole time we did it. And it's only because there weren't very many out there. I mean, we were like early adopters and no one else was doing them, so we were like always at the top of the list, which was pretty hilarious. But I went back and
Mhm.
listened to a bunch, well, to all of them, and man, they're just you just I. This probably sounds like a self. I laughed out loud. I was like, man, we are funny. But we had some great topics, great guests, and Tony has such a great sense of humor, and also, man, a great radio voice. My goodness,
He really does. Yeah, he
it's
really
cool.
mhm.
Extend his legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can download that and there's a in the ebook, there's a link to every single episode. So if there's a topic where you're like, "Oh yeah, what were Tim and Tony saying about multi-site or, discipleship or whatever that might be 20 years ago," you can click and listen to it and hear how funny Tim and Tony are. All right, I want to move into our funny segment of the yeah, and I love this cuz I get to put Tim on the spot.
You did.
Nope.
I thought
I don't
maybe
know.
you forgot.
No, didn't forget. I
All
know
right,
I bet that would not be surprising.
all right.
I did kind of forget we were gonna record an episode today. That's
That is true. When we
but
first
once
met,
I
I was like, "What
remembered
are we doing?"
yeah, but once I remembered that, I remembered the funny segment. I don't know that I have a super witty name, but maybe it's okay. Here we go. I just made up the witty name. It's gonna be called Hot Takes on the Holidays. Okay,
Okay,
that's gonna be, and I'm gonna ask you some questions that people sometimes have hot takes around, and we're gonna see if you have a hot take on it. So, for
okay.
example, you can put the Christmas tree up before Thanksgiving.
No, you cannot. It's
Cannot.
nope. It's against the law. It's against the law of social civility. It's like if you go in an empty movie theater and there's someone sitting like in row 3 in the middle, you don't go and sit beside them.
Yeah.
That
I feel like that's totally something I would do. Like,
if
"Oh, they're
there's
lonely."
if there's like this one you probably is not something you would be familiar with, but if you walk into a bathroom and there's 3 urinals and there's
Yeah,
a
not familiar.
right, you don't go to the middle one, you go to the left one. So there's things like that. So you don't put your Christmas tree up before Thanksgiving.
I normally agree with you, but I was looking at the calendar and like this year because Thanksgiving is so late, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that just feels sad for, I don't know, I think I actually am gonna maybe put it up this weekend because of that.
If you put it up before Thanksgiving, if you break that rule, you
Yeah.
can't you can't turn the lights on until after Thanksgiving.
No, that's so sad, that's the whole point is the lights, like, cozy at night, watching a Christmas movie.
Our
Ugh.
Christmas lights on our house actually went up like first week of October because we have someone put them up and that's when they do it. But well, yeah, we cannot plug them in until the Friday after Thanksgiving. So they will not be plugged in.
That is so funny, I love it. Okay, here's another one. It's okay to not have turkey at your Thanksgiving meal.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah?
Yeah,
No strong opinions?
no, I'm not a foodie. I mean, we always do have turkey. We always go to my brother's house and all gather there and they prepare a great meal.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been recently doing, I am married to a foodie. Elliot cares a lot about food. But the last few years, previous to like last year, every time we would get turkey from somewhere, he was just not happy with it. Like it would be too dry, and he felt like, and they're so expensive to not cook it yourself to like order one. Anyway, so we've been doing ham. We did ham last. I think we maybe did ham the last 2 years, or maybe it was just last year. And, I'm a fan. I think the flavor I prefer the flavor of ham over turkey, so that's been good.
My favorite Thanksgiving food accoutrement, is that the right word? Accessory? I don't know.
Side?
Side, much better word.
Accessory. Uh,
Um, cinnamon apple rings.
cinnamon apple rings.
Yep.
Oh,
They come
no.
in a glass jar, and there's slices of apple that are kinda soaked in a cinnamon cherry juice, and they're so good. And we only get it for
Mm.
Thanksgiving every year. They're in place of the horrible cranberry things that came in a jar that are so horrible. Did you ever have that?
Well, like cranberry, sauce, like, that's kinda like gelatin and you, like, put it it's, like, in a jar, like a can. It's in a can. Like that?
Ours always came, like, I can remember from my childhood, came in a jar, but it was like slices of cranberry. You didn't put it on anything, you just ate it with a fork. It was horrible.
Oh. I like the cranberry, like, in a can, like, super cheap in a can, and you, like, plop it out. That's the grossest part is, like, the gelatin, like, plopping out onto the the plate, and I do like to eat that, like, with my turkey, like, whatever protein, like ham or turkey, it's yummy
Yeah,
because it's, like, savory and the sweet.
yeah,
Okay,
it's good.
well, that leads me to my next hot take holiday question. Um, what is the dish or side called that is I'm trying not to say it. What do you call it? That's the stuff that has, like,
Stuffing?
bread. Yeah, I know, I was like, "Dang it, I just said it." Yeah, stuffing or dressing. What like, do you have an
Stuffing,
opinion? Stuffing.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Dre
say
dressing
stuffing too.
dressing comes in a bottle and says ranch on it. That's not dressing, it's like stuffing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. People have very strong, like, very hot takes on this question.
Okay, here's a hot holiday take that you're probably
Yeah.
not but I think those who are programming Christmas services at churches, they can only do Christmas music 3 times, 3 weeks.
Okay.
So 3 weeks before Christmas, you can do 1 Christmas song. 2 weeks before Christmas, you can do 2 Christmas songs. And the week before Christmas and or Christmas Eve, then all your songs can be Christmas songs. And then that's it. No more after the holidays.
Did you have that as, like, a rule at Granger?
No, but I wanted to be in charge and have that rule.
When do you start listening to Christmas music?
Oh, when my wife turns it on, I don't ever choose it.
Yeah. I do have on Christmas music, I used to have, like, the firm tree rule, and now I feel like as our world has gotten more chaotic, I'm like, love the joy of the Christmas tree, so I want it longer. But I do have a hard rule that, like, the weekend of, New Year's, that tree's going all the decorations are going away. I love the, like, reset of, like, New Year, all the decorations away. Some people are like, "Oh, I want the Christmas tree up for all of January," and I'm like, "Nope, I'm
Yeah.
not ready to feel cozy anymore. We got work to do. Let's go."
Yeah.
So, anyway, but I do for Christmas music, that to me is like a Thanksgiving, like, yeah, the Friday, either on Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving forward, but I don't wanna hear it before then. Yeah. Okay, that was our hot
Good.
takes on the holidays. That was fun.
That was good. We should do that once a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Or we can do all the holidays. We can do hot takes on Groundhog
Easter. Yeah, on Groundhog Day, oh my gosh.
You thought of
All
Easter.
right, everybody. Thanks
Thought
for
of
joining us. Go to leadingsmart.com/podcast. We'd love to hear from you if there's topics that you wanna hear about, and otherwise, we'll see you next week.
Bye.